Welcome to NCIX Tech Tips. So we're here with the Radeon R9 290X. It's been called the Titan Killer more times than I think any other card has ever been called the Titan Killer. And the reason for that is that the Titan has pretty much stood alone atop the GPU performance charts. I'm probably out of the frame. Don't worry about it. See, I'm going to move this right back down. I'm going to totally troll you there. Since it was released, there was nothing that was even close. So is the R9 290X everything it's been hyped up to be? Or is it more? Or is it less? Or is it a rabbit? Oh my God, it's a rabbit. You'll have to put a rabbit in there for that to make sense. So let's have a look at the contestants today. Up first is the GTX Titan, a $1,000 graphics card that some people were buying, even though it didn't make necessarily a ton of sense, but that might change even more over the next little while here. 780 Ti has been announced, but it's not here yet because it's not here yet. Our next contestant is GTX 780, around a $650 graphics card. Looks sexy, performs great, nearly as good as the Titan, the only other graphics card that was really in the same realm in terms of performance. And finally, the newcomer, the 290X. So there's a lot of stuff to say about this card. It's still based on the same GCN architecture as the last gen 7000 series. So that is to say it is compatible with Mantle, which is one of the big talking points about GCN, given that AMD owns the architecture inside the Wii U, the Xbox One, and the PlayStation 4. And then obviously on the PC, they've got a fair number of graphic cards out there. So Mantle is a new way of programming games to run specifically on AMD GPUs even better. So it actually goes around the whole DirectX OpenGL limitations, especially with respect to how many draw calls it can handle, and gives devs more flexibility. It is engineered for 4K, so it has a massive 6 billion transistor GPU in there that has clocked it up to 1 gigahertz. It has 4 gigs of RAM on a 512-bit memory interface, which means massive memory bandwidth, optimized for 4K gaming, so it doesn't even really start to show its muscle until you get up to around 2.5K gaming. But the good news is that 2.5K monitors are coming down in price all the time. You may have noticed physically there's a 16x PCIe Gen 3 connector and no Crossfire connectors. Crossfire is now handled over the PCI Express bus, and AMD has tested this down to 2 cards running at PCIe 8X Gen 2 and found that there is no performance difference. And as alluded to by PCPer's article about 290X Crossfire, it looks like there might actually be some improvements with respect to frame latencies with the new implementation, so that is extremely exciting. True Audio is also present on this card, just like the 260X, so that is dedicated hardware for audio processing, and PowerTune has been updated to account not only for power consumption, voltage, and clock speed, but also temperature now. So the card comes to you locked in at running at 95 degrees and squeezing as much performance out of itself as possible at that temperature. The good news, it is fully customizable, just like GPU Boost 2.0 is, so you can have the card run at whatever temperature you want. You'll just might have to compromise on acoustics or on performance in order to get there. So now let's talk numbers. In terms of power consumption, the 290X doesn't really win any awards here. At idle and under load, it runs about 10 watts higher than both Titan and GTX 780 at idle, but that's still pretty darn good, especially if you go back a couple generations before they implemented Zero Core, which basically allows the card to turn itself mostly off when the system's idling. And then under load, we're looking at around 60 degrees more power consumption than a Titan and around 70 degrees more than a GTX 780. Next up is game benchmark. So I'm going to let you guys check this out, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the methodology here. So unlike when I ran my own tests on my own channel, NCIX opted to run the cards in stock configurations. So what you'll probably notice is that the 290X does indeed seem to hold up to maybe not necessarily Titan killer expectations, but it does meet the expectation if you were expecting a Titan competitor. And when you consider the price of this card, I hadn't talked about that yet, of around $550, it starts to look very, very compelling. Now, when I ran my own numbers, we run every card overclocked, and our 290X wasn't a great overclocker. It actually wasn't that bad, but it wasn't great, and we found that 780 did tend to pull ahead when you're overclocking. Not everyone overclocks their hardware though, so you have to see things from both perspectives, and 290X is a formidable competitor when you look at it running in stock configuration and when you consider that it is less expensive than the GTX Titan and less expensive than the GTX 780 that it competes against. The other thing to note is that 290X doesn't really stretch its legs until you get to HD plus resolutions, particularly 4K. AMD has a new innovation that allows 4K monitors that are more like two tiled monitors together side by side, such as ASUS's 4K monitor, to be automatically detected with a future standard, so there will be new firmwares and all that kind of stuff that will make the whole 4K display experience quite a bit more seamless as they come down in price and as more people buy them. So the only thing that's really left is, aside from FPS, what is the gaming experience like with the card? Well, it does run hot, but of course you can adjust that, and it does run quite loud. Now there's two switches. You can either run in quiet mode, which caps the fan at 40%, or Uber mode, which caps the fan at 55%, but both of them are noticeably louder than GTX 780 and GTX Titan. It should be noted that our benchmarks here were run in Uber mode, and you'll be looking at around a 5% hit in performance if you do step down to quiet mode. In terms of how noticeable the difference in audio levels was, Wheel's take on it was that Uber mode was kind of hairdryer-ish, but I mean obviously not as bad as something like the 6990, which was really loud, and then quiet mode was still a little bit hairdryer-ish, except maybe a hairdryer on like a very low setting. Either way, it is louder than the competition, but we can hope that it makes up for it in price, and we can hope to see non-reference cards with beefier power designs and better coolers coming very, very soon. And I'm really, really personally excited to see what we see when those things arrive and we see them. So thank you for checking out this performance summary and technology summary of the Radeon R9 290X. Don't forget to subscribe to NCIX Tech Tips for more videos like this from ncix.com, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Who's the winner? The one that tops the performance charts at stock, or the one that potentially delivers quieter performance and maybe a little bit more overclocking headroom if you're willing to tune things yourself?